Okay, Tony, we're live.
Welcome back to the VSI Virtual Pub. Last week, we had former England international Stuart Pearce. Tonight, we have current England Rugby League head coach, Shaun Wane. As usual, Tim Coates will explain how you guys on Zoom can get involved and ask questions to Shaun throughout the rest of the evening. Tim, over to you.
Thanks, Tony. Good introduction. We've got the chat box in the bottom corner. If you're lucky enough to be a participant on this call, then type any questions that you've got for Shaun in that box, and we'll pick the best 2 or 3 to ask later on. If they're really relevant and it's burning, we'll interrupt Michael as he's heading away, and we will ask the questions there. And if not, enjoy, sit back, kick back and enjoy the amazing pint pulling power of our local landlord, Mr. Michael Cofield. Over to you, sir.
Tim, good evening and welcome. It's the Shankly Arms. It's my pub, isn't it? It's the Shankly Arms. But we've got a little snug as well, I believe. We've got a little guest in the snug. So I've got to introduce all the guests, that's for sure. And Andy, have you got someone for us as well?
I have indeed. I've got Brian Dean sitting in the snug, Sheffield United legend, England international. He's going to be a regular feature. He's going to have every week. He's going to have a special guest in the snug with him. We're going to talk to him a little bit later on to find out some more about what Brian's been doing since retirement. But he's studying on the VSI CEO of a sports organisation programme and doing very, very well on it. He's chairman of a very interesting ethical new business that he'll talk to us about later. So, Michael, if you carry on with Shaun, and then we'll come back to and hear about what's going to go on in Brian Dean's snug at the back end of the pub.
Lovely. Well, I'm going to take everyone now up the M6. We're going to go north, and we're going to turn left, and we're going to go to Wigan, because with a bit of luck, we're going to find our special guest, Shaun. Are you there this evening, Shaun?
I'm here, Michael. Good evening.
How are you doing?
Excellent, thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Listen, my pub's called the Shankly Arms. You won't believe it from looking at me, from the sound of me, but you're a proper Wigan fella through and through. And my family, my father was St Helens through and through. So we're going to get on. We're going to get on.
Yeah.
Especially with Good Friday coming up. Especially with Good Friday coming up, because they're a right old ding dong every Good Friday, and not fish and chips afterwards, because we were good in those days. Just chips. Shaun, can I start? 238 games you played for in total. Wigan, Leeds, Workington. You've coached the best sides in the country. You've won, I think, 3 grand finals, a Challenge Cup, and a World Club Championship to boot. So that's not a bad playing record, which tells me, as a player and a coach, you're a competitive little thing. And how are you coping at the minute with not much going on in the world? We know why we must all be at home and all sit in the dark, but how are you coping at the minute, Shaun? Because that's the first question, your well-being. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've got my head around it. It's to me, Michael, it's mind over matter. You just need to be positive. And, I get up in the morning, I have my routine. I've got a list what I do the night before of what I want to do, work-wise and around the house. Have a shower, get into my day, and everything's organised. And when I go to sleep at night, I get in bed and I want to make sure that I've improved as a coach, as a person. I've got a few jobs done around the house. My wife's happy, and I just organise my day like that. And it's tough for everybody. I've got 2 daughters who I adore. I've got a grandson who I see every day. I'm not seeing him. I'm not hugged him. So it's tough for everybody. But when you look at what's happening in the world, it's a small price to pay. And I get it. However long we have to do this for, it is what it is. You just have to make the best of it and try to come out the other end as a better person, better at your job, better coach.
You told me last week, we met for the first time last week, and we exchanged a few ideas. And I don't think you'd be too impressed with people who aren't applying the rules, are they? And taking the mickey out of it and not being responsible. That's not you at all, is it?
No, I don't get it. I don't understand. It's not that hard, to understand. And people don't actually understand the rules. And it's simple. When you think about the consequences, it's people are leaving us before the time. And that, to me, is absolutely wrong. So we all have to do our bit. And I don't stick my nose in anybody else's business. I look after my own family and make sure that everybody is doing the right thing, And if everybody did that, then we'd be great. But I just don't understand I find it quite frustrating that the government's not really gripped it and finished it. I think they've just been too kind for too long.
Listen, my little pub's called the Shankly Arms because I'm a big fan of Bill Shankly. A big fan of Bill Shankly. He spoke a language we understood as people. Growing up as a young boy, I understood Bill Shankly. If you were in charge now, would you be using a little bit more direct rules and guidelines just to make sure we all behaved ourselves? Is that you as a coach as well, by the way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, people want to be told straight. They want to know the truth. And I remember as a player, I was at Wigan for 10 years. And directors come to me and they said, Leeds have made an offer. We've accepted it. And I said, I don't want to go. I want to stay here. I've got my testimonial coming up. I want to stay. And they said, no, you're going. And I said, why? He said, well, the new coach we have, an Australian called John Moore, he doesn't like you. He doesn't rate you. And I thought, I want to know that 6 months ago. So I had time to fix it. Whatever he didn't like in my game, I wanted to know 6 months ago. I want a chance to change. I need to know exactly what he's thinking. And all I got was they made an offer, you go in, and the week after I was sold to Leeds, which was a great club, but I wanted to stay at Wigan. So I always remember that feeling in my mind, thinking that if ever I'm coaching in future, my players are going to know exactly where they stand, whether I'm happy, not happy. If I like the game, I don't like things what they're doing in the game, I don't like. Tell them straight. They need to know, they want to know. But they also want a way out. You know, you teach them, if I'm not happy with the way Shaun O'Loughlin's playing, with loads of feedback, I'll show loads of footage, but I'll stay behind with him after training and help him fix it. And if he can't fix it, then I'll leave him at the team. If that carries on, then I'll flick him. So people
that experience you had as a player, that clearly affected you because you didn't know, did you?
I'm playing for my hometown club.
Yeah. If I was playing for you, what would it be like to play for you? Because listen, like everyone I think on this cast tonight, we love sport. What would it be like to play for you?
It would be very testing. It's not an easy environment. So we work long hours. We don't go home at 1 o'clock. We're in at 6. We go home at 5 or 6 o'clock, and you know, and I can call at your house on the way home for a brew unannounced, and you know, it's pressure. There's lots of footage. I expect you to concentrate. When we train. The environment is a real tough environment, but an understanding one, you know. So I'm a family man. Like I said before, I've got 2 kids. I adore them. I get it. So if a player, no matter what, if a player needs to go home, if his kid's not so good or his wife's not so good, he can go. They have my trust until they lose it. So what I wanted to create a real testing, learning environment, you know, where you're under the pump. You need to concentrate, but there's a personal side, you know, where your family needs to be looked after. But when we're in work. We learn and we listen and we do our best every single day, even the day before the grand final. We don't ease off towards the end of the year. We go harder towards the end of the year.
I can ask you. You told me something last week when you're in the club, you're in the canteen, and you've taught your players, and it's probably the way you run your family as well. And bear in mind, we're having a pint in the pub now, so we're not interrogating each other. But you told them to always take your plates back. Just clear the table, show some respect. I wrote down last week chatting to you I wrote the word basics, and I meant that as a compliment to you, Shaun, because I've never met you before. But I think in the current environment, we're told to be respectful, 2 meters of distancing, wash your hands, do everything right. Basics, because we taught that 50 years ago. Is that how you lead a rugby team and lead an organisation? You want the basics done first, right?
100%. I can't stress that enough to you, how important that is, to make sure that I've always had a model like a pyramid, and the bottom is standards, culture, just common decency. Just, you know, we play away, we play Leeds, and we go in the restaurant and we eat. We've just beat Leeds, and my staff, my players, we take our plates back. It's not them ladies' jobs to go and collect the plates. It's their job to cook the food. And we used to take our plates back, and other teams used to laugh at my players, which didn't bother me in the slightest. You know, we won games. They can laugh as much as they want. I still think it was the right thing. So that sort of detail, you know, when we get off a coach, what we travel to the ground in, we have the best coach, you know, the Wi-Fi and the leather seats and the coffee machines and beds. But when we get off, I want that coach to be absolutely pristine. Because I remember as a younger coach, you know, with other coaches, senior coaches, when I was coaching the juniors, getting on the coach at away games and players throwing pizza boxes, protein drinks on the floor. And I thought, that's not good. I don't like it. It's not that coach driver's job. So I was very strict. You tidy up. I'm 55. I tidied my plate up. I tidied my table up. And we did it after grand finals. We didn't ease up on it. We went harder. And I think when we played games, I wanted that much detail. Like, so our leads are on side, our pass is perfect. I wanted detail to the finest millimetre. So we couldn't be sloppy off the field and nail our detail on the field. So that's the way I've always looked at it. You know, I've always been, you know, when we win, we have an Earl chef, we had a lady who helped him. And, you know, we always say, please and thank you. You know, it's the right thing to do. And
basics are big for you. Basics are big for you, aren't they?
Yeah.
But tell me, and I'm playing for you now, as it were. Do you allow mistakes? Do you forgive mistakes? Because the whole point about sport is making mistakes and recovering from mistakes. But do you forgive them? You understand that because you played the game. It's different as a coach, but do you forgive players when they make a mistake?
Well, you've just mentioned, Michael, about basics. I'm the same with core skill, and Brian will back me up here on football. There's real core skill in football, every game, cricket, tennis, rugby league, catch, pass, tackle, that type of thing. It's complete basics. I'm coaching some of the best in the world. We practiced our simple basics every single day. So when it comes to games, I don't want errors because we've practiced them under pressure so many times. I get that there's errors, but if I can keep them to an absolute minimum in every game, stats tell me that we win more games. So errors, I didn't like them. I didn't want them. We punished them in training. But I understand players don't do that. They don't make errors on purpose. But I want to see them practice simple catch pass drills. People used to come watch the training. People from Rugby Union, Stephen Gerrard, Peter Schmeichel, loads of football people watching us train. And there was a bit taken aback about how simple our sessions were because we practiced simple stuff for so long it was untrue. But we didn't make many errors in game. But in answer to your question, we made errors. I would sort of get it, but I didn't like it.
You mentioned my favourite word in the English language, which is simplicity. Because you said there, catch, pass, tackle, etc. And Shankly was pass, move and control. But you said then, but you did simple things all the time. Do players, they don't get bored training under you, but how do you keep them stimulated? Because you've got to, because they need to be challenged as well, don't they?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a story. This is true.
Sure.
So one day I was at training and we did a simple play the ball technique. So two players, one with the ball, hit each other, play the ball. Things they've done since I was 4. And we did it for 15 minutes. And I could tell towards the end, the players were looking at me thinking that we've been doing this a long time. And so I remembered how they looked at me. And the day after, before we started training in the morning, I showed them some video of errors from our last 3 games. We turned the ball over 9 times by players just not gripping the ball correctly at the play of the ball. So they got some touch on their hand, dropped the ball. So I just said to the players, again, just be honest, tell them everything. Just look at this. So if don't ever look at me when we're practicing play the ball techniques. As soon as we stop making errors, then we stop doing that drill. You know what I mean? But while we're making them errors, we're practicing that simple play the ball technique, like you practiced when you was 4. We're still doing it. And there's simple core skill errors, which is not acceptable.
Will you still do that in the England job when you get your players back eventually?
Absolutely. You play a test against Australia, them simple errors. We make a mistake at the play of the ball. That happens at test level. So we'll still do exactly the same. Simple basics. And once you've nailed them, Michael, you can start going more pressure, making everything more intense, get better. And that's where your big wins come, your trophies come.
Speaking of intensity, chatting to you last week, I would suggest you're an intense fella. You take it seriously, don't you? This isn't a bit of fun to you. You take it seriously. How do you control yourself? Because I can see you, and I've watched the grand finals, and I've watched a couple back recently with you. If you were working in football, I think you'd be in that dugout area, and you'd be getting pretty wound up, because I think the managers get very wound up. I'm actually pleased you're upstairs. How do you control yourself? Because this means a lot to you, doesn't it? An awful lot to you. How do you control your own emotions?
Yeah, it means a lot.
Keep that away from the players.
Yeah, well, you just need to be smart. You know, you need to be very, very smart. You know, you deliver, because you know at half time you're going down to speak to the players. You need to be measured, and you need to understand that you've got 10 minutes to give them some information at half time. So you need to control your emotions. If you're pissed off, then you just can't really show that much, unless the players need a wake-up call, and that's what you need to do. But if I was involved in football, I wouldn't be down in the red dugout. I don't understand how a football manager can stand down there and see loads of players running past him like that. I like being up top, and I can see the shape of my team and where we're not taking advantage of things like that. And I've got a guy outside me clipping games live, and we can show it at half time. And I don't understand it. It's just like gone on in football for many years. It seems to be accepted that the manager has to stand down there and scream on instructions when nobody can hear what he's saying. And
well, let me have a chat with Brian at the end. I might ask him that, because I work in football as well, and I've never understood why they stand literally under the pitch just shouting when no one listens to a word of what they're saying anyway.
Yeah, I don't get it.
But you mentioned football there, and listen, you love your family first and foremost. That's your number one. You love your job, and you take it very, very seriously. But number three, you love Man United. I think you love Man United as well. That's your third. Yeah. That's your third of three. And they had quite a good Scottish manager at one point, Sir Alex, and you got to know him, and he came to see you. What impression did he make on you, Shaun, as a man? Before you go into his trophies and what he did as a manager, what impression did he make on you as a man?
I was so impressed when I met him. It was untrue. He has made a real long-lasting impression on me. And it was just his knowledge, laid back, easygoing. I spoke to the players, and when he sat down, I was just in awe. And I'm asking, I'm hammering him with questions about different things, about who does he look up to, and he just took everything in his stride. He had an aura about him which was so impressive. And he come for an hour, he stayed for 4 hours, and he just loved our environment. And I remember just listening, hanging on every word he said. And I think we were going to Wembley, playing the cup final. We had to get measured for suits. And my CEO was texting me saying, "You need to come down and get measured for your suits." I thought, there's no way I'm saying to Alex Ferguson, I need to go. I'm not bothered about my suit. I wanted to sit down and talk to him. He was just so knowledgeable about everything. Everything made sense what he said, and nothing was flashy. Everything was simple, which is, again, it was just a real eye opener for me. I was so impressed, and I met him a few years later at the golf day at Mere in Cheshire, and he remembered me. You know, he's just a real good man. He come over. I remember Shaun Wigan sat down, him and Jim of Sky News, I forgot his name.
Jim White.
And Dave Whelan come over, and it was just fascinating listening to them three just chat and talk, and nice and easy. It was fascinating. Really, so impressed with him. And we've had many speakers, really good speakers, Gary Neville and Ricky Hatton, all good speakers, but Alex Ferguson was the man.
You're a good listener, by the way.
Yeah, and I'm good at questions as well. I'm good at asking questions. So yeah, I love listening, but I ask as many questions.
And you didn't start coaching till about what, 40?
Well, I started coaching professionally, in my 40s. But I was coaching the juniors when I was about 23, when I was at Wigan, just going to schools going to the schools coaching rugby league. But I started tackling it very seriously when I was about 40, yeah.
And you mentioned that you love Man United and coaching and Sir Alex. This is just us having a beer. would you be a good football coach? Could you, and Brian's listening as well, but could you cope with a different environment with football and footballers? Because it's different, because the game is bigger, it's global, and there's more money. There's a lot more money. Would you cope with that?
I would struggle with people not being grounded. I'm not saying football's not grounded. I do a lot of work with Man City, and I've been impressed. You know, the really, really good people there at Man City. My director of performance, Matt Bickon, he went there to look after the academy there. So lots of times from really, really good people. But I've seen young men who on a lot of money not grounded, which is something I would struggle with. You know, they need a reality check and understand what they've got. They're very, very lucky. And yeah, so I would struggle with some aspects of it, but Man City have got their eyes wide open. They go into it and they understand what they need to do with these kids in their academy. I was very impressed with what they're doing there.
You're still developing. You're 50. You're in your 50s. Are you still developing as a coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been trying to get together on Zoom with some NRL coaches, because they're at home in the same as me, and I want to meet them like this and just have a chat about attacking philosophy. So every day I read, I do something. I want to get better every single day without fail. I'm obsessed with it. So yeah, I'm learning every day. I'll learn something here today once Brian starts speaking, and I've met Tony many, many times. So I learn off everybody.
And this is one thing for you. You've achieved an awful lot as a player, as a person, as a father, as a husband, a grandfather. You've achieved an awful lot in your life. I asked you this last week, and I felt a bit cheeky asking it. So I've had one go at it. I'll ask it again. Are you satisfied at all? Because you've done an awful lot from where you started in Wigan, age 15. You told me leaving school. In the last 40 years, you've climbed a few mountains and you've planted your flag on the top. Are you satisfied with it all? No,
I will never be satisfied, and I'm okay with that. People, you know, I've said that, and people have felt sorry for me a bit. You should never feel sorry for me that way, because it's just the way it is. There's always what's next. So I never sit back and look. I enjoy it, Michael. I've enjoyed it. Good memories, you know. They've gone. I want to make more memories. I want to win a World Cup. I want to beat the Aussies in the Ashes. And I'm obsessed about doing that. And I'm going to work so hard to make sure we do that. People think we can't do it, which is perfect for me. So I'll never be satisfied. I'll never be happy. We wasn't a club at Wigan, Michael, where I had loads of sayings on the wall. We had one. It was case about make good better. You know, the Japanese card people. Make good better. Always look to improve. I got to be the drunk one now. I got it tattooed on my arm. There. I don't know why I did that.
I was missing Wayne that night. I was missing Wayne that night when he got home, by the way.
Yeah, my missus was really upset when I did that. But anyway, and I got it tattooed on my arm one day, and so I'm obsessed with that. You know, not being happy. We would train at Wigan one session. We'd do 8 drills in one session, and when we finished, we'd come in with all my staff. And we would analyse every drill. Did it work? Yeah, that drill was perfect. Right, how do we make it better? That wasn't that good. We didn't get what we wanted out of that. Right, what change do we need to make? So we'd analyse everything, no matter what. We would and make changes. We play Easter, Friday, Monday, and Australian coaches hated it. I loved it. I've been brought up with Good Friday, St Helens, Easter Monday, play Salford. And then one year when I was at Wigan, we played St Helens, we beat them 26-10. Everybody's great. We're playing OKR away on the Monday. And we won 84-6. And we did a review after that game, and all the players skipped in thinking everything was good. And the review of that game was about 40 minutes. 30 minutes was negative. I'm not trying to be smart here, Michael, but this is the truth. 30 minutes was quite negative, because even though we won 84-6, I saw little things in that game what I didn't like. Like we'd score a try, and the player wouldn't run around and get as close as he could to the post to make it easy for the kick. Yeah. So I thought, if I don't address this could happen in a grand final. It might not, but it might. So I just made a point of the players skipped in the morning and everybody's good. And I made a point of just like everybody, our standards are too high. We're not walking around hugging each other. How do we get better? I can't have that. I want you to fight like hell to get us close to that post to make sure we get 2 points. It's habit, everything's habit forming. So
yeah,
the players were a bit pissed off.
I was going to say, did you not? If I've beaten St Helens on the Friday, and when you beat St Helens, you're going to be sore on the Sunday, aren't you? Or the Saturday, because you're going to be sore. You turn them out again on Monday. They've rattled 84 points past Hull, and you've given them a little bit of a G up. If I was a player, do I not go? I'm not being funny, but I've given everything there. 2 games in 5 days. We've scored 100 points, and you're still having a go at me. Do you not run the risk of losing a couple?
If I'm going to lose any players with that, I'll flick them, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way.
No,
but they're not my style of players. If they want to sit there and smug and hands behind their head, they're not my style. They can go. So if I remember the review specifically, and a few players went, I thought that was a great try, and I said that was a great try, 100%. I give you praise, but please understand that there's detail behind it. Could you have got any closer to the post? And that player said, yeah, I could. I said, well, do it. What happens if that costs us a grand final? So I just explained to the players my thinking. We weren't trying to add anything or use information as a weapon. I want them to know exactly what I'm thinking. Do you agree? And someone said, yeah, I'm not sure I agree with it. I'm okay with that. I'm absolutely okay. If a player says, I'm not sure, well, you carry on being not sure, but this is the way it is. We're doing a review. And I'm going to tell you, if it's something I don't like, I'm going to tell you, because I want to win a grand final.
Shaun, can I just jump in and ask a question here, Michael? Because we've got a question from...
Of course you can.
Got a question from Hein Kirk, Shaun. Hein is a South African coach in rugby union. Hein is operating now over in Holland, but he's actually one of our sporting directors, delegates. He's about to graduate probably just before Christmas, but great credit to Hein. He used to travel in every 5 weeks from South Africa or the west coast of America, as it was. He then moved into a job over there. So Hein's got a question which says, how much of setting your culture in your teams comes from you setting the boundaries or the players having a say in a workshop environment at the start of the season? I thought that was quite appropriate with regard to what you were talking about.
That's a great question, that. And the answer to that one, Tony, is I've never been one for keeping information and using it as a weapon. I've always been one for telling everybody everything. There's nothing hidden. So I will get my senior players who are really, really rated and respected in a room, and I would tell them, I don't like the coach being untidy. I don't like people not saying please and thank you to the chef. I don't like water bottles in the gym. Do you agree? And the reason why I don't like it is because we can't, just the reason, like I said to you before, about we can't nail the detail on the field and be sloppy off it. They don't correlate. They need to be the same mentality. And just explain to the players that way, what key things, the standards do we think are important. So I'd ask them to come up with stuff. So I go in this meeting, half knowing what I want them to say and guiding towards it, but I want them to drive it. So I need it to be their idea as well. So we'd have a pretty open chat about it.
Right. Thanks for that, Shaun.
We're getting loads of questions coming in. I'm going to hand back up to Tim. Tim, are you there?
I am. Thanks, Michael. Really appreciate that. We've got so I've got two actually. I've got one from Stevie Nixon. You talked about the pyramid, the base being standards and common decencies and culture. He wants to know what the rest of the pyramid looks like as we go toward the top.
Yeah. I do keynote speaking. Get me in and I'll show you exactly what you normally talking. Opportunities. No, it's quite complicated, quite a bit inside it, but it's standards, culture, it's core skill and something else, and then it's training pressure. So doing repetitive things in training, increasing the pressure. So it's going to be more than what they get in the game. And then it's club rugby, test match rugby, success, something like that. But it all makes total sense. You know, and what I found when I coached in Scotland with Scotland Rugby Union, is some of the players didn't have the basics, catch pass under pressure, and then they wanted success at test match level, and we couldn't do it because the simple foundations. It's like a football club where players can't whatever a simple skill is in football. They're not going to move on to be the best in the world unless they can do the basics very easy. And it's same in business. It's exactly the same in business, and that's what I'm doing it now. It's keen on speaking of businesses, and what I show in sport, exactly the same I roll out in business as well.
Very good. Absolutely. I think there's a commonality between business and sport, and the synergy is unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're quite right. You're quite right. In the world, Martin Cox put, the world was going to look very different after post this pandemic. What elements of the sporting endeavour and excellence can we bring forward as drivers to help reset the UK? So I'm guessing if you were to take control of whatever it is and make some decisions about coming out of this, what would you do, and why would you do it?
You know, I'd love to do something like that as well, because do you know, this is very, very sad what's happening. It's unbelievably sad, the amount of people what's ill and loved ones who are losing. It's unbelievably sad. But we are going to come out of this and we are going to appreciate everything a lot more, what we took for granted. Sport, friends, meeting each other, going for a coffee with your mate, having a pint, having a game of golf, everything. We all can't wait for that. This is going to carry on, this period. So this is a great time to reset. It's 2020, it's a new start to a decade. Everything leaning towards making a real good change. And no matter if you're teaching golf, a football, a rugby league, rugby, whatever it is don't try to be that big, flashy Pep, Jurgen Klopp, and that. Just be happy. Your players getting better and improving. You don't have to coach the best kids. You know, make that kid what's not that good a bit better, and making the people in the group look at him in a more friendly manner. That's proper coaching. So I'd love it to reset on every sport. Was let's just absolutely nail the basics. And then people will say, well, we do that. Do you really? Are you moving on to complicated things quicker because you want to be Jurgen Klopp? You know, and I see that in rugby union. I've seen it. I know it happens. You know, I went coaching my mate's team, an amateur team, under 14s. And I went and asked them just run around and catch and pass. And so I could see the level of skill they had. They could catch and pass. Some could, some couldn't. And I looked over and all the coaches are looking at me as all that. So I went over, I said, what do you want? Are you moving on and doing some of the things you do at Wigan with 14-year-olds? And I said, listen, Timmy, some of these can't catch and pass. Some of them can. We'll concentrate on them. I said, no. What about these kids? Just make them better, you know, and play more skill games, make them competitive, something where everybody can join in.
Yeah.
You know, and if everybody grasps that in sport, not in rugby league, in sport in general, just improve everybody as people, even the kid what's not that good at that sport. That to me is coaching, making that kid feel better.
No, good answer. Really good answer. I've got two more, and then I believe Tony's got a couple as well. Shaun, given your recent sojourn in rugby union, if you were to pick one current English rugby union player to represent England in the next Rugby World Cup, who's it going to be?
I like Joe Largebury. I like Anthony Watson. Quite a few in the England team. What I like, but I have had to think about this over the recent weeks. I'm a Wigan lad. I'm going to go for Owen Farrell, and I think one day he will end up playing league again. He's a great player. He's a great player. He's tough. He's competitive. He's a good person. Says please and thank you. He brought up really well. Yeah, all the flashy bits where he gets well paid and he's playing World Cup finals. He's a good person. what opens doors for people. So he's got the balance of being the best player in the world and being the nicest person that is. He's so grounded, it's untrue.
Okay. Do you think he's going to make that transition between the two again? That'd be good.
Yeah. He played for St. Pat's. He's still got his Wigan accent. Still likes to whack people, so he's perfect for league.
Oh, very good. I've got one more question from Spencer because these have been sent in. He said, I'm interested in the structure that Shane has for his scouting team, the numbers of people involved, the processes in place to identify up-and-coming talent. And do you ever look at any of the lower leagues to focus on?
Oh yeah. I mean, I watch an amateur. I watch rugby in South Africa. I watch anything. You know, we had I tasked all our scouts with looking at different sports, looking at athletes in football, what weren't going to make it in football, and we did get a kid from football. We're down in London who's still at Wigan. So that's what we did. We looked at other sports, what we felt would make, once you're an athlete and once you're competitive, you can jump into many sports. So yeah, I looked at lower leagues, I looked at rugby union, I looked at Australian rules, I looked at every single sport there was, you know, to try to find the next big Wigan player.
And they're really good answers, and thanks for that. Tony, you've got one from Ed, have you? Has he sent one in for you?
Yeah, Shaun, I know you're up for answering any question, so I'm going to throw one at you. Got a question here from Ed Airy. Hi, Ed. How you doing? Ed's on our Chief Executive Programme. Hope all's well, Ed. So the question is, really interested to know, given your experiences, your views on the Gregor Townsend, Finn Russell situation and how you would have handled it.
Yeah, I don't know Gregor that well. When I went up there, I was up there for a year, but I was did a review for Scottish Rugby, a recommendation what they needed as a country with the kids. But I know Finn, and I have met Gregor. That was a tough one. He is a good player, Finn Russell. But the fact is, I'm very strict on standards, very strict on behaviours, culture. And if a player stepped outside that, then everybody else around the organisation, you see how you're going to deal with it. And I'd have probably dealt with it the same way. I know Finn, you know, he's a character. But I liked them at Wigan. I liked having them characters, somebody who did something a bit different, but they understood me. The basics of what I was about was a simple culture, well-mannered, work out of training. And Finn is like that. But he stepped out of line. He stepped out of line and went against the rules of what the senior team have put together. So I don't think Gregor had much option other than do what he did. But I would have tried out to make sure he worked with Finn Russell without a shadow of a doubt, to a certain extent. But when I'd rather lose a game than put up with somebody not behaving correctly.
Would you?
I'd rather lose a grand final.
You'd rather lose a test match than have someone not behaving.
Test match, but yeah, I would. I've got principles. Yeah, I've got principles, and if somebody blatantly did that to me, he's gone.
That's it.
He's gone.
It's an interesting one. Can I just ask? Can I build on that? I'm just going back to something that I read, Michael, about Phil Jackson when he was Chicago Bulls, and he had a similar incident, didn't he, with Dennis Rodman, at a particular time, and he wouldn't go on and do something, or it created such a stink. And his thought patterns were exactly the same. His principle was that you can't have, nobody's bigger than the club, everyone's got to pitch in, etc., etc. And he said he was going to bench him and make him sit there the whole time. He said, and then something inside him made him switch and think differently, that he was putting his own ego in place of the performance of the team. And what he said was, in that moment, he changed his mind, but he reprimanded him as if to go on, you do this, you make sure that this team wins, because by the time this is done afterwards, me and you are going to have a chat, we're going to sort this out. And he said it was that instant in the moment, he just realised that something had gone on. what would you, if you were in the same boat and you had that challenge, would you perhaps think about the same principles? Would you act in a different manner, or would you absolutely stick to your guns?
I'd stick with my guns, and the reason why I would is you might win, you might get him on, and you might win that game. But will with that sort of environment, will you give in to bad behaviour? Will you win a grand final at the end of the year? Will you win the Challenge Cup? Will you win it, more importantly, the year after and the year after? And I wanted to build success at Wigan. I wanted to dominate the competition for 10 years, 15 years. I wanted to win more trophies than anybody else ever. So for me to do that, I honestly believe in my heart, culture, standards come first before anybody. And no matter how good that player was, they had to stay in the system. And I sound like I'm a bit obsessive. And I had some awkward players at Wigan. I played what we're hard to deal with. Rugby league players are flawed characters, because you're asking a bloke to stand 15 metres apart and sprint at each other 30 times a game. It's not normal to do that. And that's what these players do every week, every day in training. So they are flawed. And I like them characters in the team. A little bit different and a bit hard to handle, but there was some basics, standards, simple things which I was strict on. Because of my chats with the senior players at the start of every year, there was a few which were non-negotiable. How we behave on coaches when we travel to hotels, how we speak when people come in our building, and them non-negotiable. This is what I want. I want people knowing that you're good people. I don't want people think you're an arsehole. So if I was in an hotel in London and I heard George Williams, my half, going to reception, not saying thank you, I pull him and having a meal afterwards. I heard just a reception needs to thank you when she give you a key, and he might think it's a bit weird, but when they get a bit older, I get loads of messages off the players now thinking, I know what you mean now. You always meant the right way for me. Which is
No, that's really honest answer. We can't have asked for anything better than that. I think that's been really transparent and straight from the heart. Thank you very much. I think that's a really good rounded edge to kind of pass the hospital pass over to Andy, who's sat there. I've just unmuted you, so you can now chat. Andy, I'm going to pass this over to you now, so you can bring this in and tell us a little bit more about our special guest.
Well, first of all, cheers to everybody. What a fascinating insight that was, Shaun. Really
good help.
Shaun, thank you.
Absolutely fabulous. In the weeks to come, we're going to have another fabulous guest who's going to be delivering interviews from his snug, Brian Dean. Everybody knows him as a Sheffield United legend, played for England, but he's done an awful lot since finishing his playing career as a footballer. And I'm going to invite him. He's a delegate on our CEO of a sports organisation programme that VSI run, and he's chairman of a new business. And I'm going to ask Brian to tell you just a little bit about that new business and what it is he's doing.
How you doing, Andrew? All right?
Very well, thank you, Brian. You're looking good.
Good.
Tell us about the business.
So basically, I retired about 13 years ago from playing, and I've done various things. I mean, fast forward in it. One of the things that I found, myself and a number of professionals who I played with at the highest level, found that there were a lot of gaps in terms of what we really needed in terms of services, preparation for life after football and so on, in an ethical manners. And I think what we've done is we've come together with leaders in industry to kind of fill those gaps, to kind of use our unique USP to really sort of like fill those gaps. So, for example, we have a lot of players coming out, and the transition from sport into ordinary life is tough enough. But in and around sport, Anybody will tell you there's a lot of exploitation. There's a lot of need on other people, shall we say. One of the things that we are doing is we want to help to prepare athletes, footballers, whoever, for life after the sport, so that they don't have to rely on on other people. They're good enough to go into the world by themselves and look after themselves. Football's most footballers come from a working class background, and they're in it from the age of sort of like 15 upwards, and you don't have the same skill set. Excuse me 1 second. You don't have the same two-year-old boy coming in there. You don't have the same skill sets as somebody who's been able to forge a career outside of football, and we just think it's really important that people are prepared when they finish. I don't think people realize outside of sport how much sacrifice you make, and these are all, a lot of these things that we sacrifice are all transitional skills as well, and it's important to notice and to be aware of what you actually have. So part of what we're doing is we're setting up, we're mentoring. There's a number of things, but it's also nice to be kind of back in the changing rooms as well. That's one of the biggest things, because in sport you're in a bubble, and like I say, sometimes when you dip your toe outside, it's very difficult to kind of find your way, or it takes time to find your way. Very much in the same way as leaving the army, the navy. I remember when my brother left the navy when I was a kid, and there was such little support that you could see that he was having issues adapting, and it's the same in football. There are mental health issues, which we want to. Everybody talks about it now, but we really want to help to cut those issues down for people making the transition. Financial education. There are a lot of young players come into a lot of money very young, and it's about understanding the literacy of finance and understanding how to look after your money for yourself. Being a member of the first generation of Premier League players, when the money situation changed, you kind of can look back and reflect on how open we were to being given the wrong types of advice. So those are all the kind of areas where we want to encompass as a business at Phoenix. And it's been fun. I tell you what else is good. We get pigeonholed as individuals. And sometimes you kind of aren't given credit for where you actually are. And it's nice to be at the top table, because those transitional skills are no different. If anything, when you're making decisions in sport, you're doing it at a microsecond. You need to get results in, you talk about business needing to get results in, you talk about half yearly profits, you talk about getting a result every 3 months. In sport, you have to get a result every 3-4 days. So that's how finite the decisions that you make are.
So Brian, you talked somewhat about ethics in the past and culture, as Shaun's done. Tell me about the challenges that Premier League football and footballers face at the moment around furlough payments, around imposition of pay cuts. Are we going to come out the other side of this crisis with a different culture, maybe even a better culture?
I think we have to. I think if you look, people are dying at the end of the day, and that's a big difference. I know I can guess some of the conversations that are going on around contracts and protecting those contracts, but we're in a situation now where we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And it's okay, people making decisions and coming out with statements on behalf of players, But I saw a statement, for example, on the weekend talking about how much money going in, a figure of 200 million. Now, I guarantee you that those words that wasn't a footballer making those calculations.
This was the tax that the revenue will lose by the 30% pay cuts.
Yeah. And straight away, the perception is that it's players making those decisions. I don't know any player, and I've touched on this before. Everybody comes from a working class background, and or most do. And I don't know any player who won't want to play their part and have a role in doing something going forward. But what I think is going to happen is I really do feel there could be a backlash if they don't get that right. And people might turn their backs on professional sport at the top level. If you look at what's happened at Liverpool, for example, different people will agree, some will disagree. There's a moral duty, I think, and we shouldn't always measure success financially. That shouldn't always be the measure of whether a business is successful or not. It's about how it improves the community, what it does for the people, how it makes them feel. On a Saturday evening, for example. I'll give you a funny story. When and a lot of what I'm talking about comes from my experiences. I remember being as a player, you end up in this bubble, and you can be quite selfish. And I remember I was doing some corporate work on the Saturday when Sheffield United were, I think it was around 2005. And I remember driving home after a game, and it was about 6 o'clock, and they'd lost. And I remember how miserable that made me feel. And what I realised was that was my weekend was going to be, that was going to shape the mood of my weekend. The fact that we'd lost, and I was going home now, and I've got nothing else to look forward to. And it made me think a little bit more about what it must be like for a fan working all week, gearing up to the weekend. You have a game, and if the team plays well, everything's fantastic. If they don't, everybody's on a downer. So it does kind of change your perspective coming out and looking back on your career and summarising a lot of things.
So in the coming weeks, everyone, we're going to be hearing more and more of Brian's thoughts, and he's going to be chewing the fat in the snug with a variety of guests. One last question I'd like to ask you, though, Brian. If
Sure.
you had a choice of anybody that you could invite for a pint in your snug, who would it be?
Better be careful here, aren't I?
Or I'll tell you what, in a professional sense, which leader in the world of sport would you like to invite for a pint and a packet of peanuts?
Ooh, I've never really. Alex Ferguson, again. I was lucky to play for the likes of George Graham, Dave Bassett, and some very good managers, Terry Venables and so on. But Alex Ferguson is the one that everybody talks about as this mythical type character. And, I've seen it. He has got an aura about him. So he's the kind of person who you try and, you try and get those little nuggets, and he's the kind of person who you'd like to take a few words of wisdom from, I think. Seems you put me on the spot.
Well, Shaun talks about transparency, and I've heard you speak about transparency. Do you want to describe the occasion you were left out of a cup final after scoring 2 goals the previous week, and how you found out?
Yeah, sure. So,
An example of what,
it was a game on Sky, and we played Everton, and it was the team. What had happened was that the manager had rested certain members of the team who were going to play the next week, and I wasn't one of them. And before the game, he came up to me and said, "Listen, this is crazy." He said, "You should be one of the first names on my team sheet." He says, all I need from you is, I want a good performance today. I haven't made my mind up what the team is yet. And I thought, okay. So, bearing in mind, we played an understrength team. I know we played a lot of youngsters. And it was a time when Joe Royle was the manager of Everton, and he had that really strong, dogged team. They used to call them the Dogs of War. I played them at Ellen Road and drew 2-2, and I scored both the goals. I'll never forget, afterwards I went into the changing rooms, and everybody's happy, everybody's shaking hands, everybody's patting you on the back saying, well played, Brian, 2 good goals and all the rest of it. And then when the management came in, they couldn't look at me. No one, the manager couldn't look at me, didn't even come over in my space. And I knew straight away what that meant. It meant that I wasn't going to be playing, because there was no eye contact. And, it was, I'll never forget that.
Who was the manager?
Howard Wilkinson was the manager. But the thing that made it a little bit more palatable for me was I was in good company, in that, Rod Wallace didn't make the bench. I think Thomas Brolin was on the bench, and Thomas had a indifferent time. But for me, it was that team had already been picked, and you lose respect for people when that kind of thing happens.
What Shaun was talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I went into management, and one of the biggest things for me when I became a manager was I played for some fantastic managers, and what I tried to do when I went into management, I tried to grab something from each of the managers that I was managed by. George Graham, there was things about George. I'll give you some examples if we've got time. George was like the teacher who you had at school who you were scared of, but if you did well, you'd get praise, and you knew that you deserved it. Dave Bassett was a fantastic man-to-man manager. And there was other people. Alan Pardew was, his Marmite is Alan. Some people like him, some people don't. But he had some good traits. I picked them up. There was 1 or 2 managers who I decided. Well, there was one manager in particular who I decided that's exactly how I don't want it to be for me as a manager. And what I tried to do from there was I decided that I would use those experiences to become the manager that I would have liked to have played for. And it's Shaun will back this up. You have to create an environment in the club that everybody wants to go in. Everybody wants to train every day. I remember there were times, I remember just before Howard Wilkinson got the sack, and the medical room was always full. And it was full because nobody wanted to go out there in front of 40,000 people at Ellen Road when the team was playing badly, because that's a vicious crowd. And if somebody had a hamstring strain, that would normally take 2 weeks. Well, it took 4. And that was because that was the environment that had been created and the culture that had been allowed.
To pass to Michael, just to wrap things up, and then he's going to give that pass back to Tony just to say goodbye and call it a day.
Listen, I've got lucky because you get to meet people not by mistake, but you get an opportunity. And Shaun, that was an opportunity to meet you last week. Thank you for this week for coming down to the Shankly Arms, and I hope to come up to the Winkle one day, which I believe is quite good in the northwest. And we can share a pint together. And I hope. Listen, in the world we live now, which is confused and frightened, I just hope that you play the Ashes this autumn, because that means we're back travelling, we're back being human, and we're back playing beloved sport. So, Shaun, good luck, and thank you very much. And you better go and be nice to your family now, because we've taken you just past the Fergie time. But thank you very much, and I'll pass back to Tony to wind up. But thanks, Shaun. Thanks for coming down the pub.
Thank you very much.
Shaun, love it. Absolutely love tonight. Had a couple of texts from a few friends and a few people that we work with here, but Gary Bowyer, former football manager for Blackburn Rovers, amongst others, has just texted me to say, love him, want to play for him. he might want to play for you, Shaun, but trust me, I've seen him tackle. He isn't for you. He really isn't for you. So there's a date in the diary in July. You're going to be joining us for a pint at the Winkle Beer Festival.
Yes.
So let's all pray that we're back to some sort of normality then, and we can go along and have a pint and enjoy ourselves and talk more stories about football. So really appreciate your time tonight and wish you all the best when you finally get hold of the England squad. And of course, wish you all the best for the World Cup next year.
Thank you very much.
So to everyone who's been on the platform and listening to this evening, hope you've all enjoyed the conversation. Thanks, Brian, for getting involved, and we'll see you next week. But next week, our guest drinker will be Jonathan Northcroft, who is the chief football writer from the Sunday Times, where we'll be talking tales from the other side. Until next week, guys, stay safe. See you again.
Goodbye. It's last orders.
Bye.
Orders.